Hey guys, hopefully you have gotten your AMSCO books, boom, and you will actually have an assignment of reading chapter 1 of AMSCO. It's pretty short, pages 2 to 14, and a lot of this you did with your summer assignment. And then we'll have a quiz every week on your AMSCO book chapters on Fridays, right after we do current events. So I'm going to give you an overview of some of the important aspects, and then we're going to actually see a little John. It's a pretty short one. John Green crash course. I am a big fan of John Green, and there's another fellow named Heimler that does a really good job of giving an overview of these different periods. So let's talk about period 1, and this is a little meme. Brace yourselves, because this is going to change the world, this period of exploration. As you discovered during your summer assignment, and it might have been something that you knew before, maybe from your world history, before Columbus got here, there were a great number of different tribes that lived in the Americas, both North and South and Central America. And you can see, I know you did as maps as well. This map kind of delineates your hunter-gatherers, your nomadic tribes, your tribes that actually stayed pretty much in one place. We had some really interesting civilizations, mostly along waterways, that were building mounds and had very stratified societies. And of course the Aztecs in Central America and Mexico, and the Mayans, and then the Incans down there in Peru. So maize or corn was their main source of existence, and that's going to change the world in Europe and make their health so very much better when we get to the Columbian exchange. So all these folks, they talk different languages. They didn't necessarily get along with one another, although there is evidence that there was trade between a lot of these different groups, especially those that we saw settling along, like the Mississippi and some of these other waterways. So although they had many things that were the same, they were very different societies. So let's look at the goals and tools. You may have heard before GGG, Gold, God, and Glory. And the goals for these European explorations: wealth, gold, the system of mercantilism, which we'll talk about, which was what England, of course, wanted with their colonies was raw materials, for these colonies to provide them with raw materials, and then in return they would send them back goods. This was a competition, and if you've had your world history, you know that Spain, Portugal, France, the Dutch, the English, they were fighting among themselves and will continue to do so for a while. And then Christianity. Now, the Catholic religion was, of course, the main religion was Spain and France. And you're going to have this kind of religious upheaval with Luther and, of course, the Anglican Church in England, but the idea that they were the civilized society and wanted to spread Christianity to these natives. Cool tools. A lot of these came from the Mid-East, Arabian, the maritime astrolabe and the caravel and so forth were actually developed in those areas. Map making, we've got Portugal that was doing a lot of exploration down the African coastline. And then for money, they're going to set up these joint stock companies that are going to fund exploration. Sadly, they're going to bring a lot of disease, and they are going to decimate the native population with disease. So a lot of differences between the Native Americans and Europeans. The Europeans, of course, monotheistic, one God, basically. and they had the Pope and cardinals and a very formal written view of their religion, where the Native Americans, they more were what they call animistic. They worshipped the sun gods and gods for hunting. They had medicine men, which actually had some pretty amazing cures. They did dances to these many gods, so they were polytheistic. But some of the things they had in common, and you'll find that while you have Mr. Scott, he will get into these creation stories of the floods and ceremonies, and they were moral. I mean, you had some basic tenets that all of them followed. Things that were, you were good to your children. No cannibalistic, although there were a few in some of these islands. Okay, so at the very beginning, and I think you probably looked into this in the video, there's several theories about exactly how all of this was settled through that land bridge. Then the Vikings up in the northern part, Greenland, and with Leif Erikson. There's also a theory that West Africa got across those oceans, and they're finding some evidence of that especially in the Brazil and the South American nations, that there was early exploration across from West Africa, which is kind of cool. So here we go, GGG, Gold, God, and Glory. Power, new technology, economic growth. You're going to have these new religious orders rebelling against the strict Catholicism, which that'll result in settlement in North America. And of course, the Renaissance is going on, and you're having writers, you're having this idea that the earth is not just centralized around these European nations. So a lot of big things are going on in Europe at this time. As we mentioned earlier, Portugal was the leader in this early exploration, and they are the ones basically that are going to go down the coastline of Africa, and they are going to be the first to start the slave trade. And Henry the Navigator, he actually sets up a school in Europe to train sailors and to start this exploration. All right, so we have this kind of controversy about Columbus. Was Columbus a really good guy? Did he really discover America? I mean, there were people here before him, and instead of celebrating Columbus Day on October 12th, many states now are celebrating Indigenous People Day. So some of you are familiar with John Oliver. He did a thing about Christopher Columbus and the controversy that is he a good guy, or should we maybe take a step back and reevaluate that?
And now, Last Week Tonight asks, how is this still a thing? This week, Columbus Day. How is this still a thing? America has a lot of solemn holiday traditions, from saluting the quiet dignity of the Irish, to proudly celebrating our birth as a nation, to just spending quality time with family at Thanksgiving. But next week brings perhaps the strangest of American holidays, Columbus Day, which brings with it the beloved annual traditions of cheesy local commercials.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue to celebrate Mattress Depot.
And Americans turning up to an unexpectedly closed post office and going, oh yeah, it's Columbus Day. Shit. This proud holiday commemorates the landing of Christopher Columbus in the Bahamas in 1492, beginning a long tradition of obnoxious white people visiting Caribbean islands and acting like they own the place. In school, American children learn about Christopher Columbus's life.
I will discover a shortcut to India. We'll call this part of India San Salvador.
Of course, what they tend not to learn are the parts of Columbus's life where he kidnapped Native Americans and sold them into slavery, had his men slice them to pieces, and through disease and warfare killed roughly half the population of Haiti. But in fairness, none of that rhymes with in 1492. Nevertheless, Columbus became famous for his discoveries, specifically the discovery that you can discover a continent with millions of people already living on it that had also been visited by Vikings around 500 years earlier. In fact, many U.S. states and cities no longer recognize Columbus Day, raising the question, why do the rest of us still do it? Sure, it's a chance for Italians to celebrate their heritage, but there are so many other heroes they could celebrate. Why not Frank Sinatra Day? He killed no Native Americans that we know of. Or Mario Batali. If he's killed anyone, it's through cheese. Or Al Pacino Day, a day that would probably start well and end as an overblown parody of itself.
Great ass!
So America's least favorite holiday commemorates a murderous egomaniac whose most famous discovery was a case of getting lost and refusing to ask directions. All of which is enough to make you wonder, Columbus Day, how is this still a thing?
So, good point. There are a lot of controversies about this. So we'll talk a little bit more about that controversy as we go through this. Okay, so from your summer reading assignment and from AMSCO 1, you looked at the Columbian Exchange, and this is very significant. Look at all the things coming from the New World to Europe that is going to affect their way of life, especially corn. Think about this too, potatoes in Ireland. Ireland didn't have potatoes until the Columbian Exchange. In return, of course, a lot of things come back from Europe to the New World, especially things like domestic animals. The horse that is going to really change the nomadic tribes in the West when the Spanish introduced horses. And sadly, disease. The Native Americans spread syphilis over there to Europe, but the smallpox and devastating diseases that they had no immunity to, the Native Americans, and is going to kill them: malaria, diphtheria, smallpox, influenza, typhus, and so forth. So just devastating disease that's going to be brought over from Europe. The Pope is going to divide the world in two. And remember, most of these folks were Catholic at this point. And you can see where the line here in Brazil, which is Portugal. So everything on one side belongs to Portugal, and everything on the other side belongs to Spain. Now, even though the Pope did this with the Treaty of Tordesillas, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, the significance is that it will be largely ignored after a period of time when more and more exploration begins. So the Spanish are going to be looking for gold, and one of the systems that they'll set up is a system of forced labor of the natives called Incomienda. And this is, again, going to be devastating, along with disease, pretty much work the natives to death. They set up this hierarchy of peoples, the Spanish in Mexico, Central American countries, and South America, The top of the ring, of course, are the Spanish that are directly from Spain. The Creoles, and the Creoles are born in what is now North and South America, Central America, with Spanish parents. Mestizos are mixed breeds. Creoles also are considered somewhat mixed. Then Native Americans, and then finally, with the advent of the slave trade, the enslaved people. And this, we'll talk a little bit more, John Green will go into this system of the Incomienda. Now, people didn't just necessarily acquiesce and go along with all of this. There were some rebellions, which we'll talk about, and against the Spanish in the Southwest, the Pueblo Rebellion. The Aztecs, of course, are going to fight the Incas, and there are stories of these folks rising up. But they did not have steel. They did not have the weaponry to stop this advancement. People from Europe actually, of course, felt like they were superior. However, as things got worse and worse, there were folks that said that something had to be done. And mostly these were religious people. And there were some rules put in place, but by the time these mandates were enforced, or to say stop this practice, it was too late. It was too late. There were too many natives that had succumbed to disease. And again, we'll talk about this. So, other conquistadors. We have Cortez, of course, with the Aztecs, Pizarro with the Incas, and the story of the Black Legend. And this is going to be part of your crash course. These were the conquistadors, and wore the armor, they had steel, they had weapons, which the native people did not have. Okay, guys, so that pretty much is the end of this. You're going to have an 11-minute crash course, and I'm posting that link. And you can finish that off with your notes, and we will move on again tomorrow.